And during all this time, I got to meet my longtime partner, Paul Reiner, in San Francisco. And when I went to Chicago, he went to pick me up, and we drove in a car that was my car there, all the way from Chicago to San Francisco. And because the beginnings were poor, because he got divorced and he had to pay a lot of alimony and child support, we moved to an apartment house in Palo Alto. I think it was called the Tan House. And then after 1 year, we went to Redwood City on Elm Street to a nicer apartment. But we thought, why not have a house? So somehow something came about, excuse me, that there was a house for sale on Potrero Hill at 1133 DeHarrow, and Charlie Peterson had the listing. So he worked the deal so we could buy it. It was a distress sale, and it was a fixer-upper. But Paul, in those days, I don't know, he got the energy working too many hours and coming home and fixing the houses and so on. We got to fix the house and started living in Potrero Hill, our first house ever. We had other houses before, but that was with my parents, not with him. Now my parents live in Chicago. My mother decided to retire from her teaching position, and my father was working in school too, as a school in the janitorial services. He didn't speak English well. They both retired, and they went to San Francisco. There was an opportunity of a house, another horrible fixer-upper, in Potrero Hill on Rhode Island. And we bought a house, and here come my parents with my aunt alive, because my grandmother and my grandfather had already passed away in Chicago, and with Adonis, my parents' German Shepherd, and I believe one of my mom's small Pekingese. This was in the early 70s. Now we are in the Harrow, and my parents are on Rhode Island. Now an opportunity comes about that there's a lady who has passed away by the name of Ann Polich. She owned a beauty salon called Ann's Salon, and she lived only a few doors away. She wanted to sell her house and sell the shop. She wanted to move, I guess, to Santa Rosa. So when we heard about that, we approached her, we bought the salon, and after 1 week of fixing the shop, after she left, Heri, the hairstylist of the stars, came about. Heri, H-E-R-I, is my real name, because David de Alba is a stage name. So the shop, I had all these experiences working with wigs and makeup and all the high fashion styling I learned, excuse me, during the 60s in Chicago. So I got to do fancy hairdos. A lady told my mom, who became my personal secretary, and was nice, but she did the hair okay. At least it felt clean when she did my hair. My mother said, you better do more than making these people feel clean, you better make them look glamorous. So I used hair pieces for some of these ladies and made them very glamorous and everything. So we had a lot of locals from the area, Potrero Hill, ladies and gentlemen, that came into my shop, and some of the boys from Finocchio's, when they found out, they would come and bring wigs, so I would do their wigs. I did most of the wigs for the performers at Finocchio's. Now, there comes an opportunity when I get to work at Finocchio's after an audition and coming back, I get hired to be working there steady. So I had to work at Dara Finocchio's 4 shows a night and the beauty salon in the daytime. How I managed to sleep a few hours, I guess when you're young, you can do things like that and not collapse. I made it.
una tombola, tombola, la vida es una tombola, tombola de luz y de colores, y todo es en la tombola, tombola, y todo es en la tombola, tombola, y pues es un amor, tombola, en la tombola del mundo, yo he tenido mucha suerte, porque todo mi cariño a tu número jugué, que yo he soñado con tu nombre, esperaba conocerte, y la tómbola del mundo me premió con tu querer, porque la vida es una tómbola, tómbola, la vida es una tómbola, tómbola de luz y de colores, y todo es en la tómbola, tómbola, y todo es en la tómbola, tómbola, encuentras un amor, tómbola, la vida es una tómbola, tómbola, la vida es una tómbola, tómbola, de luz y de colores, y todo es en la tómbola, tómbola, y todo es en la tómbola, tómbola, encuentras un amor, en la tómbola del mundo yo he tenido mucha suerte, porque todo mi cariño a tu número jugué, que yo soñaba con tu nombre, esperaba conocerte, y la tómbola del mundo me premió con tu querer, que la vida es una tómbola, tómbola, la vida es una tómbola, tómbola de luz y de colores, y todo es en la tómbola, tómbola, y todo es en la tómbola, tómbola, encuentras un amor, tómbola, 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 tómbola.
So now cameras, TV cameras came about from Chemo TV in Spanish and Channel 2 and Channel 4 because they found out that it was what they call a mama and papa store, because it was the son doing the hair and the mother, that's the secretary. But because my mother had many degrees, her name was Dr. Tila Garcia, she used psychology. So a lady came that had problems, she would, well, after I did the hair, they were getting the hair dry, she would try to console them and so on. So my mother became very popular among the ladies. In the shop, and also with the men too that came, some gentlemen who I cut their hair. So after these documentaries take place, I understand that there was a movie to be filmed, a pilot for a TV movie by the name of Spies, S-P-I-E-S, starring Tony Curtis. And Lorimar Productions selected my shop. But what was most interesting was that we went to eat quite often to the brasserie, I think it was called, at the Fairmont Hotel, a very fancy little restaurant, to have Oscar pancakes. And a lot of times you would see the Mills brothers, some of the performers that worked at the Venetian room eating in the middle of the night. And I knew one of the hosts there. So one night, producers from the Lorimar Productions came and said to him, I guess they knew him, we have shot every beauty shop in town, and every time we send it to Hollywood, they don't like it. From the fanciest Vidal Sassoon shop to other shops. He said, well, I think you may like this shop, and then he explained about my salon at 18th and Kansas. So after they had breakfast, I guess at 3 o'clock in the morning, they went and they took photos of my shop from the outside. I guess what saved the ship was they were allowed movie stars' photos on the wall of movies that of stars that have met me, who autographed personally their photos to me. So when they sent this photos to Hollywood, they said, this is the shop we want to use. Now I get notified that Tony is coming to shoot. On the day of the shooting, of course, he arrives, and his producer and the director and the lady co-star, I forgot her name now, and before shooting, he started talking to the ladies in the shop and to my mom, and then one of the ladies, Aida Corvair, was one of my best customers. She said, oh, I have to go to my house to bring a photo so you can autograph it. She ran to her apartment. She came back and she said, Tony, please autograph it. It was her wedding picture. He said, are you sure you want me to? Yes, yes, please. Now, one lady that used to do her hair, Joan Garrison, who was very theatrical in her ways, this incident I will never forget. Tony Curtis says, may I use your bathroom? He goes to the bathroom. He comes out. Joan says, I have to go to the bathroom too. I was doing her hair. And when she comes out, she sits on my chair and she says, now I can tell everybody I sat in the same John that Tony Curtis sat. Now, Tony Curtis didn't expect that, so he gets close to me and he says, spanking his fanny. I didn't know my fanny was famous too. So he says, you have all these pictures of these stars. Most of them were my friends, they are dead, but I am not there. I said, no, because they gave me the pictures autographed, and you don't have a picture now that you can autograph from me so I can put it up. I said, but I brought you a long-playing record of you with Jack Lemmon and Marilyn Monroe from the movie Some Like It Hot. So he autographed the record for me. And he said, let's go outside in between the scenes. So we went outside. He took my album. He directed me across the street where they used to have a oh my goodness, a guy who owned like an antique shop. And there are cameras, and then all kinds of people from Potrero Hill walking. I don't know who they were. So he said to me, here's my director and here's my producer. So I said to Tony, in a very theatrical way, I only talk to Mr. DeMille, Tony. I don't talk to anybody else. He said, I know you do Gloria Swanson on stage, a little bit of Norma Desmond. Why don't you do this? We have some leftover film that we can probably use for a promo later. So I did a little scene from Norma Desmond. And then he took me back to the shop. He said, I take off my hat because you work in drag at Finocchio's, because shooting in drag for Some Like It Hot was very difficult for Jack Lemmon, for myself. So I take off my hat. Now the scene was that I was supposed to have his co-star sitting on my chair, and then he walks into the shop, she gets up, and then he pays my mother for my services, and they leave. It was very short. They had to do it once or twice. Then afterwards he left, and a day later, meanwhile, the photographer from Potrero Hill, I forgot his name now, he came, he took photos outside, and even the late Herb Caen wrote in his column that Tony Curtis came to film at Heri's Beauty Salon. Two or 3 days later, it was like an earthquake that hit. There were people outside my shop with cameras taking photos of the shop. There was no more filming. So now I had to transport you many years forward. When I got to see Tony Curtis before he passed away in Las Vegas, he did two retrospective interviews conducted by Norman Clark at the Flamingo Library, which I also played myself. And I got to meet him in the VIP room. By that time he had a stroke, so he was sort of in a wheelchair-like type situation. And when I came, I think I wore something like this, but I had a little angel on my lapel. I said, Tony, this is Dave Airby. Oh yes, from the shop. He was very, very sharp. I filmed in your shop. I said, remember the story about the lady and the John? I said, refresh my memory. So I told the stories. Oh yes, I remember now. So people were saying in the VIP room, how come this guy knows Tony and Tony's talking to him like family? Then he says to one of the ladies who works at the Flamingo Library, when Mr. De Alba does Judy, I want you to be the best seat of the house for my wife and I. That never took place because he passed away. Oh, but he says to me, thank you for dressing up for me. And anybody who has a lapel, an angel on the lapel, is okay in my book. I said, I wouldn't think of otherwise dressing up, but dressing up in front of a famous star like you. I am not the nowadays crowd that comes in t-shirts and floppy shoes. I pay respect to you or anybody in the business. So this was many years later. Now, going back to Potrero Hill, when I got to meet, to work at Finocchio's, of course, many interesting things happened. Like one day, my mother says at a beauty salon, Heri, that's my real name, Mrs. Finocchio called, she wants to come to the shop. She wants to come to the shop. Why? So this was after my long run at Finocchio's. So Mr. Finocchio came with Mr. Finocchio, and there comes a black limousine, big car like a Cadillac. And Joe Finocchio comes up with his Italian accent, and Eve behind him. He says to every lady, hello, I am a Joe Finocchio. If you ever come to my club, Finocchio Club, you tell me you are De Alba as a customer, you coming in free, and you can bring somebody with you. He's talking to the ladies there, and Eve Finocchio comes, very Joan Crawford-like. She says, David, keep doing what you're doing. I was doing somebody's hair. The lady's name was Alba Medica, I still remember. I was doing a flip. She says, keep doing your hair, just listen to me. She told me a story as if I didn't know her club. I worked for a long time for her. She said, Carol Wallace, the MC, is sick. So you have to fill in for me as the MC maybe for 2 or 3 weeks. Remember, the lights are here and the sound. I knew that already. And Joe Finocchio said, listen, boy, because you're helping us, we are on a bind. Instead of parking far away, what you always do, you can park next door to us, and we pay for the parking lot. Well, I couldn't afford to pay the parking lot because they charge by the hour, so that was only for the tourists. So I parked there, and there I was emceeing the show for the first time because I was hired before as a singer. And one of the waitresses, Jeannie, who was married to René de Carlo, the international dancing star from Mexico, said to me, oh, David, Mr. Finocchio was bragging how wonderful that you came to help, because he says without the MC, the show cannot go on, because the MC is the one who introduces the act. He is so grateful to you, as I'm surprised, because they never want to give you a compliment, because they think our heads will get as big as a watermelon, and we're going to ask for a raise. So I'm shocked he was complimenting me. So then, of course, there's many interesting anecdotes about Finocchio's.
Well, you know what, before you go on talking about Finocchio's, I'd like to hear a little bit more about Potrero Hill and
okay.
what was the neighborhood like?
Yeah, Potrero Hill was at that time a transitional neighborhood, and the snobbish real estate agents, I'm sorry to say that, from areas like Nob Hill would say, we will never bring our customers to your area. They had at that time the projects and so on, but they had a lot of wonderful Polish and Italian people, so in between some of the so-called bad seed, they were a lot of interesting, and that's why we could afford to buy it, because now it's impossible to buy. The house we bought is now worth over $1 million. I couldn't afford to go back. So it was there was a hippie type atmosphere near the goat pizza. They were all Italians. I did their hair. Most of the people I did their hair were older, over 40. But I didn't have time to congregate much, because I would go from the house to my shop, from the shop to go to eat. Sometimes we went to eat a lot on Mission Street to a wonderful Chinese restaurant, Chinese-American restaurant called Sincere Cafe, which was very inexpensive with very good food. Then I had to rush home, bathe, go to Finocchio's, go to sleep, and come back next day. So I remember fondly, of course, Cicerone Realty, Peterson Realty, Atchison's Pharmacy, which I'm sure is gone, and there was not that many shops when I was there. And of course, I had to take care of my parents, so I would take care of my mom to take her to the doctor and so on. So my life in Potrero Hill was very busy. Between my parents and my aunt, who was alive, Consuelo, and working in the shop, going to buy the supplies for the shop, going to Finocchio's, going to rehearse with a musical, with the director of the band, Bill Bullard, in Oakland. So I remember Potrero Hill as our first homes in California for Paul and myself and for my parents. My mother used to say to me, the best times we had were in California. Now, because I had a very bad incident that somebody broke into our home in Potrero Hill and they stole many things, including two very rare lamps that belonged to the Odeon Cafe. I only have one left. We got nervous and we decided to move to Brisbane, but I kept my shop all the time, Brisbane, and from Brisbane we went to San Mateo because Paul and I and my mother, we were like gypsies. We wanted to improve having a house with a bigger yard, with a beautiful canyon view. We wanted to taste life, not just get stagnant. So we landed up at the end moving to Santa Cruz, which was my Shangri-La, because there we had an acre and a half of land with two flowing creeks behind, mature trees that were old trees, the beach maybe 20 minutes away, and still commuting to the beauty salon in Potrero Hill, and still commuting. Anytime Mrs. Finocchio called me, David, can you come to work tonight? There I go. So then the sad part came about when, after many years, the company that Paul worked for, Granger Associates, sold out, and the new company took over, and all the big shots like Paul were out. When he went to work, put the card in, it wouldn't work, and the guard said, you don't work here anymore. So when I came home from work, from the beauty salon, I see him like a white ghost. He said, I lost my job. So now comes the dilemma, trying to find a job in California. Nothing happens. He had to go through angioplastics twice because that caused him to have a light heart attack. My mother said to me, you know, we never in life could enjoy many things for a long time because something comes to destroy it. And I think this is the time we have to leave California for good. Paul applied in San Diego and nothing happened. The people that were supposed to be his friends that he helped, nobody came to his rescue. So he applied and the job came in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Now we have to put the house for sale, the beauty salon for sale, and that was the hardest thing for me to do because I had to give a written letter to each lady explaining why I was leaving so they could read while they're getting the hair dry. Some of them came out crying, oh, Teal, I'm sorry, David. They were like family members to me. So somebody said to me, why did you leave California? I said, it's not because we wanted to. It was destiny that forced us. And although we were gypsies, we would have stayed forever in Santa Cruz, and I probably would have stayed in the beauty shop even though my mother passed away in 2008 working, because although Finocchio's closed, I could have done shows in California. But
oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to hear about some of the people who came in to your hair salon. My
hair salon came like the owner, Nelsa Sabadini, who owned the salon. She was an all-Italian family. Many Italian ladies that lived in the neighborhood. John Garrison, whose husband had the cleaners down the street. Men and women that live in the neighborhood who already were customers of Anne's, and some that came new from the TV documentaries they did on me, and they said, oh, we heard about you, and so on. So it was a family shop because we had not children, but mostly ladies and a few gentlemen that came for their hair. I did wigs. I have some customers that would bring wigs to me from San Jose, a wonderful customer, Kyoko Sagimori, a Japanese lady who followed me everywhere. So I have very faithful customers. Even people from Lake Tahoe will come in once in a while to have a haircut by me because they heard about me. So that kind of a family was broken as we had to leave California. And it took a long time for me to mend the heart because I said to my mom, this is very difficult. And one thing was very difficult too was that the owner of La Cache from Los Angeles, he met me before once, and he said, if we ever open a drag show in California, I call you. 2 days before Esco closes, he calls me in Santa Cruz, Mr. De Alba, would you like to be our Judy for La Cache's opening? 1 block from Finocchio's, of all places. And I said, I'm sorry, I have to leave California for New Mexico. So that was the hardest thing for me, to turn down a show job. So when I remember Potrero Hill, I remember fondly the salon, my mom working with me, Tony Curtis coming to the shop. Many people from different areas bringing some celebrities that were not famous, but they still were performers that came for me to do their wigs. Us, Paul, fixing both houses on Rhode Island and the Haro, making houses that were ready to be torn down into livable houses, beautiful houses. I did meet in Potrero Hill, across the street, Robin Price. That was his stage name. His real name was Douglas Cumming. He became a friend for life. He worked at Finocchio's before my times during the 60s. So when he knew that Paul and I, we bought a house, he introduced himself, and he helped me a lot, making costumes for me. And after we left California, he followed me to Arizona. He even came to see me perform here. So that's a very good memory from Potrero Hill. Robin Price and his mom, Mary, who I did her hair and I did his hair.
Did you go 20th?
Yeah, when I left the house, there was a guy next door. I don't like to remember his name. He was always the sour puss. Every time you make some sound, oh, you're making some noise singing. I said to him, boy, you should move into a farm because this is a city. By the time I moved, he moved too, next door to me. But next door to us, there were some hippie guys, very, very funny. They used to live there and very nice to me. And then Robin Price and some older ladies across the street. But I wasn't coochie with the neighbors. I didn't have time. I had to, my life was busy between eating, my parents, and beauty shop at Finocchio's. My day went like this. But the only actually good, and of course, in Potrero Hill, Ruth was in charge of the, she's retired now, Passon, I forgot her last name.
Ruth Passon.
Passon, yes. She gave me a little column in the Potrero, because there was a write-up about me when I opened the shop. And later on, Ruth gave me a little column, Ask Heri the Hairstylist, in which people would write in to her and ask questions, and I would answer how to do this, how to do that. I still remember there was a lady, I think it was a black lady, who came to interview me, and she looked at all the photographs. And I don't like to be politically correct because it takes away all the essence, trying to be funny nowadays, trying to cover things with a band-aid. She says to me very, very clearly as she interviews me, I don't see any black entertainers on the photographs. I said, well, you have to look closer. Lena Horne is there, Nancy Wilson is there, and another black entertainer. Unfortunately, the ones I met in San Francisco were white entertainers. But and later on in my life, I got Johnny Mathis on the wall, and that's the first thing she said. Peter Lina thought he got a kick of that. I said, there's 2 of them, and autographed very nicely to me. Nancy, and I said, I had many black entertainers I met in life, like Ella Fitzgerald, and many of them that I liked, like Sammy Davis Jr. I said, but I don't control the photos that are given to me by people who come to see me at Finocchio's. Oh, okay. But I thought it was funny for her to say that to me all of a sudden. But anyway, those are memory.
So was it? I'm just curious. So there was kind of a hippie. The hippies were coming in.
You had either some hippies left over, the older Italian ladies that were in their 60s that were there forever, a few Polish ladies I did, then a mixture. I didn't hang around enough to go to a nightclub. I don't think it was a nightclub at that time, but from what I gathered from the people coming to my salon, they were, like I said, a mixture of Slavic people, Polish people, Italians, I love Italians, And most of them were straight people that came to my shop. I have very few gay men that came for haircuts, but they're mostly straight ladies and gentlemen. So it's a mixture of things. And of course, some of the entertainers from Finocchio who brought the wigs to me, and I did their wigs. And when one of them, Lucian, who used to do Sophie Tucker, he will go on the stage and says, "This creation was by David Alba, who did my hair." So I used to get my name announced all the time at Finocchio's. But this is mostly what I remember about Potrero Hill. Of course, the thing that bothers me is how time changes. When the earthquake happened and prices went, instead of down, berserk, going higher and higher. When we tried to sell on Potrero Hill, it was a nightmare with open houses and open houses in the 80s. It was almost impossible to sell. Finally, the buyers came. But then when the earthquake happened and the agent, one of our agents, called us, a lovely Japanese lady, Mio Canlan. She said to my mother and I, "Can you imagine, Mr. Garcia, when we had to do open houses for you and your sons? Now you put a house for sale in Potrero Hill and you get sometimes 5 offers within less than 3 days, and they are fighting for it. No more open houses." My mother said to her, "It doesn't surprise me, Mio, because everything we did in life, it took a lot of hard job. And we had to perspire a lot to get, we never got anything easy in a gold platter like some people. We had to get it, sometimes it took so much effort to get it that I said to my mom, by the time we get the finished product, I am so exhausted, I cannot enjoy it because I'm just dead beat. It's much easier if something came in an easier way, and not with such, and that's a persecution from Cuba. So when I start telling you in my flashbacks about my Cuban beginnings, then you'll understand how things came about.